Rev up your engines!
Well, here's a good one. The courts ordered Tesla to have to buy back a Model 3 because the customer says the autopilot drives like a drunk novice driver. Not just a drunk and not a novice driver, but a drunk novice driver. This happened to happen in Germany. He had to pay $6,983 to have it set up on his Tesla Model 3 in Germany. He complained in his lawsuit that the assistance functions like automatically overtaking slower vehicles didn't work at all, that the steering behavior on entrance and exits were spongy and resembled what a drunk novice driver is going to do, and that traffic lights and stop signs weren't recognized by the computer. Now, Tesla disagreed with what this guy's lawyer said, but the court didn't buy it, and they made him buy it back. They had to pay him $76,000 back. Personally, I think anybody who spent $76,000 for a Tesla Model 3, those cheap ones, you know, they're not that cheap. They may look cheap. They may not have panels that fit right, but they cost an awful lot of money. For once, the German courts did the right thing, and they made them buy it back because the guy said, this thing doesn't work. It drives like a drunk novice driver. Take that car back. I don't want it anymore. And the Germans made them buy it back. Maybe there's more to come. Who knows? Drilo says, what do you think about the Chrysler 300s V6? Well, I am not a Chrysler fan. Their V8s in the 300s were excellent vehicles. Those had a ton of horsepower. They're fun to drive, right? The V6 is these Pentastar engine that Chrysler have. I'm not a big fan. They've got various generations, and the newer ones seem a little bit better than the previous generations, but the previous generations were crap because they generally do not hold up over time. For a perfect example, the diesel engines that are in the Chrysler Dodge products now, they used to use Cummins diesels, which are great. Then they switched to these stinking Fiat Italian-made ones, some company that Fiat owns that makes diesel engines, and they're garbage. They're on their third generation now. The first two were absolute crap. The third generation one just came out recently, so nobody can say whether it's going to hold up or not. But hey, 1 and 2 were bad. I would not bet the farm on 3, I'll tell you that. Josh Jahada says, what's your opinion on an 01 Sequoia? I bought one with 300,000 miles for $4,000. They're giant vehicles. They have bulletproof Toyota V8 engines in them. Being that big, Sequoia, just like why they call them Sequoia. It's the biggest one that they make. Sequoia, like the giant trees, right? I've seen them in California. They're huge. But they're gas hogs. They eat up gas like no tomorrow. 300,000 miles is 300,000 miles. I've seen them with 500,000 miles, and you only paid $4,000. Realize, you can put another engine in it. There's plenty of good rebuilders that do those V8 engines over. The tranny goes, you can replace that. For what you paid, if that vehicle's in good shape, frame isn't rusted and everything's solid, you got a good price, you can drive it. Be serious and drive it a long way. You can always replace, like I say, the engine tranny if it finally wears out. What the heck? Just realize, they're tremendous gas hogs. If you're willing to pay that kind of money for gas, hey, have fun with it. Tim Holcomb says, hey, Scotty, will you please run for president? No, our political system is too corrupt. All the politicians are paid off by the corporations to get elected. They have to spend all this money, billions of dollars getting elected. Then they owe these guys favors. It is a dirty, filthy job. It's not what it used to be. I remember George Washington, the first president, they wanted to make him king, and he said, no, he says, I think this has to be a one-time thing. I'm doing it for the country, and then let somebody else take their chance, right? Today, hey, if you told the guys in power they could be king, they'd jump at it, put the crown on their head, right? I would never get involved in politics. Never, ever. I've met politicians, I've met presidents before they were president, and I was not impressed. They're politicians, they owe people favors, there's dirty dealing going on in Washington. I mean, that's just the way that it goes. I wouldn't want to get involved in that stuff at all because it's not above board. Just like I don't make videos for advertising companies. Nobody pays me to do products. I actually check them out. If they're good, I say, and you see a lot of them out show bad. Now, they're bad, I'll show they're bad too. But I don't care. I'm just out to tell the truth. And politicians, all they give you is sound bites. Either they don't know the truth because their mind is pretty much gone, or somebody's paying them in the back pocket and they don't care what the truth is. They got their money and then they'll pay off their favors by helping out these other people that may or may not be doing good for the country. So no, I would never run for politics. Carport says, Scotty, how can I tell if my car is a lazy oxygen sensor? All right, if you see your car napping all the time, that's a dead giveaway. Oxygen sensors have to report in milliseconds how much oxygen is left in the exhaust to make the car run correctly, so the computer can either give it more or less fuel so it runs perfectly, right? You know, cars like me, you get a freeze frame oscilloscope, you hook it up and you watch the waveform. Oh yeah, that one's good, that one's not, right? Modern cars are pretty well made, even in the last 20 years, that if your oxygen sensor's bad, it'll trip a code, and it'll trip a code for oxygen sensor not switching correctly. Then you'll know it's lazy. I mean, you really got to know your stuff if you want to analyze it using just data, but the computer software is pretty good on most cars, and it'll tell you. Theoretically, those sensors can last forever. They're coated with different precious metals, and as long as you don't have an oil burning engine, that then the oil will clog it all up and burn on it. It won't work right. They can last forever. I mean, it's not that common that they go out, unless you buy a cheap car, you know, like a Fiat, and then the sensors just aren't made that well, and they'll just break on their own. Neil says, I got 2015 Subaru Forester, 99,000 miles. Is it okay to do the first transmission oil and antifreeze change? The antifreeze, of course. You always want clean antifreeze. Some last 5 years, 100,000 miles. Some last 7 years, 150,000 miles. You definitely want to change the coolant. Doesn't matter if you've never changed coolant. Change it. You don't want dirty coolant. Putting in clean coolant isn't going to hurt anything. Transmission, completely different story, because automatic transmission shift by friction. The friction in the fluid drives the car. Guess what? Dirty fluid has what? More friction. Dirt makes things have more friction. You can get a car that's got 100,000 miles. If it's never been touched, you change that fluid and filter, it might start slipping because the new fluid is very slippery. That's up to you. If your Subaru shifts perfectly fine now, I would leave it alone. Subarus have weak automatic transmissions. I would have changed it every 30,000 miles just to save it. I wouldn't buy a Subaru anyways, but if I did have one, I'd change the fluid every 30,000 miles. It's so easy to do. It's a nothing job. Now, if it shifts okay, if I were you, I'd leave that part alone, because that can be affected by age. But the coolant, no. Changing that is fine. It's not going to hurt anything. Georgie says, what do you think of an oil catch can bronze filter? Can it get clogged up? Eventually, they can get clogged up. Yeah, that's true. I mean, you got to clean them every once in a while. But the advantage of a bronze one is you never have to buy anything. You just take it out when you empty it, and you clean it, back flush it, and have the crud sent out and run it again. You wouldn't just leave it there forever and not do anything with it. But, you know, when you changed your oil, you just take it apart and then back flush the filter part. You can use any kind of cleaner, any kind of good cleaner, spray it through from the inside, and the dirt will come out on the outside, and you can use it over. Because there's just bronze. There's not a paper element that'll get clogged up and you throw away and buy another one. It's bronze. You clean out and use it forever. Cardboard said, Scotty, my 99 Mercedes has vacuum door locks. When it's cold, one door doesn't work right. Yeah, one of the dumbest ideas in the history of mankind, okay? Everything's electronic now. It's pretty simple. Wires, motors. Mercedes, for some bizarro reason, ages ago, decided we're going to have door locks that work on a vacuum system. So, of course, the vacuum system has to have vacuum pressure. When do you lock your car doors? When you shut the engine off and get out, right? So the engine isn't creating vacuum anymore. So it's got to be stored in these canisters. Well, guess what? When they age, and that's an old vehicle, right, 99, the vacuum lines start leaking and seeping, and the valves and the little door lock system, they start leaking and seeping and breaking down. Then you got to figure out where the leak is. Well, it's a vacuum leak. They're very hard to find on tiny little things like that. It was one of the dumbest designs in the history of mankind, right? You got to find out if that one doesn't work. You probably got a leak somewhere, either in the driver's door lock assembly or in the hoses that feed it. Start taking them apart and hoping. I mean, and of course, it's really stupid. You think about it. You're always opening and closing the door, right? Well, they got vacuum lines coming in the door. Guess what? Every time you open and close the door, the vacuum line bends a little, and eventually they'll crack and start leaking. It was a really stupid design, but that's the way it goes. Everything's electronic now. Jim Bergen says, how can you tell if a new tire is bad? I have a vibration the installers can't find. Very good question, and I see that a lot. See, the problem with tires, watch a YouTube video on building a tire, and you'll see they have various belts that are laid upon each other, and there's a lot of actual physical jobs that are still done by humans. It's not all done by machines, right? If, let's say, the belts aren't correct and they're misaligned, the tire's no good. It will wobble at high speeds. What you really want to do, you think it's bad, take it to a real tire place where there's a pro who knows what he's doing. Have him take all the weights off of the tire. Then put it on a machine. Put it on a machine and it spins and it shows that it's way out of balance. Get another tire. They should be relatively closely balanced. Brand new. I've gotten good tires that don't have any weights on them. They're Michelins because they were built good and the tire is pretty much balanced the way it was built. If it's way off, you can put weights to try to counteract it, but they will never work perfectly because the tire is inherently out of balance. Now, if it's really messed up, jack the car up, spin the tire, and if you see it go lump, and then that part's worn weird because it's got a lump, and when you spin it, it'll go lump, you'll see it. You put your finger, it'll touch it as it spins around. But the absolute, if you don't see anything, get another tire. It's not worth it. You cannot balance an inherently unbalanced tire. It can look like it is once they put a whole bunch of weights on it, but it's still, at certain speeds, it'll probably still wobble. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.